Press Means Business. Tonight we're very fortunate. We're joined by Janet Yellen, the former Treasury Secretary and Chair of the Fed. We've been discussing how the United States is ramping up its economic offensive, threatening new sanctions on Iran, etc., and planning to hit Canada with fresh tariffs. But we're also talking about growing anxiety in the bond market and inflation. And it's all raising stakes for the US Fed Chair, Kevin Warsh, as he prepares to make his first speech, the major speech of Jackson Hole this week. Janet Yellen has delivered this address 3 times. There you see her with the head of the ECB, then Mario Draghi and Fukuda of Japan, 2014, 2016, 17. She's discussed everything from labour market to financial stability. Janet Yellen is with me now. How carefully do you have to put together that speech, knowing that people like myself and everybody else are literally looking to see where the periods and the commas are to see what you actually mean?
Very carefully. A lot of work goes into that speech. It's one of the most important and carefully watched of the year. Generally, these are research conferences, and often the focus is on something, reasonably deep economically, something about how the economy works, an aspect of it. Perhaps Chair Warsh might talk about AI and its future impacts on the economy. I'm not sure. Could be something about how to think about the inflation process. But this is an important speech and is always carefully watched, and certainly will be on Friday morning.
Now, a lot of what Chair Warsh is doing, essentially, and I'm trying to be sort of as tactful as I can in putting it like this, but essentially is unwinding much of what not only you put in place, but also your successor, Jay Powell. Forward guidance, press conferences, dot plots, all the various machinations of keeping the markets informed of where the Fed's thinking is. He actually seems to believe that that's not as essential. Do you think it's a mistake to get rid of forward guidance or press conferences?
Well, I think it's fair for a new chair to ask some deep questions about the practice of monetary policy. He's set up task forces to do that, and I think wants the committee to rethink its approach. That doesn't mean that everything that has been put in place will or should be thrown out. With respect to forward guidance, I think it's rarely appropriate for a central bank to make an unconditional promise about how it's going to set rates in the future. That's something that's been done only in the most extreme circumstances. We consider that generally stop short of unconditional forward guidance, but used forward guidance to influence market expectations. After the financial crisis, interest rates had been pinned at 0. There was really no room at the short end of the curve to influence rates, and we saw an opportunity to lower long-term rates and thought it was appropriate to do so by informing the market about our monetary policy strategy and why we thought it would be appropriate to hold short rates low for longer than market participants generally expected. And I think research shows it worked, it was helpful. Those are extreme circumstances. But look, when the market is pricing long-term bonds, the most important thing they need to figure out is what is the likely path of short-term rates. And of course, that depends on what's going to happen in the economy, how inflation and unemployment behave. And they need to bring their own expectations to that. But they do need to understand the Fed's reaction function, namely contingent on economic outcomes. how does the Fed think it's appropriate to set rates? That's not an unconditional promise, but it's explaining to the markets what the Fed's monetary policy strategy is. And I do think that's an essential element of communications to help the market appropriately price at the longer end. And also, beyond that, an institution that is important as the Fed is in determining the course of the economy has a responsibility to the American people to explain why is it making the choices it's making, and how is it understanding economic developments, how does it intend to go about achieving its mandated goals of full employment and price stability. And that does require, I think, more discussion of the economy and monetary policy strategy than we've seen so far.
Can I finish with the politicization of the Fed, arguably by this administration? The Lisa Cook case, for want of a better word. The Supreme Court ruled decisively that the Fed is sui generis. Whether the administration goes back for another bash at this is still up for grabs. But on the fundamental point of independence of the Fed, do you think it is under threat today?
I do believe it's under threat. I've been very concerned about the attacks that President Trump has made on the Fed. The attempt to remove Lisa Cook for a cause that hasn't been spelled out to the public or to her. She hasn't had a chance to defend herself. It remains to be seen how that will be sorted out. And the threat of criminal proceedings against Chair Powell, really, these are threats that are unprecedented. And I still see a Fed that is independently making decisions according to its best assessment of the economic outlook and what's needed to achieve its congressional mandate. But I also see an administration that is trying to bring pressure to bear for monetary policy to be set in the way that President Trump regards as appropriate. And there's no proposition that has been more thoroughly tested. And most countries have, through their own hard experience, come to realize that inflation's lower, economic growth is stronger, the economy is more stable when you have an independent central bank that is not pressured by the government to make decisions for political reasons or to help the government finance its fiscal policy.
My producer will kill me for throwing this one extra question in because we're almost out of time. But I just got to ask you, Madam Secretary, which of the two, I'm sure you've been asked a million times, but which of the two, Treasury Secretary or Fed Chair, which did you enjoy more? Not make a better contribution, which did you enjoy more?
I enjoyed both. I'm not prepared to rank them. They're different. They're great jobs. I was immensely fortunate to have been entrusted with both of them. And, I've been a lucky person to have these opportunities, and they were both great.
I would venture to suggest, ma'am, that we are the lucky ones to have had you to steering these major institutions in difficult times. Secretary Yellen, Chair Yellen, I'm never sure which one I'm supposed to put first, but whichever it is, Janet Yellen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm grateful to you.
My pleasure. Thank you.